Here are some techniques that you can use to create your cover. So I'm going to go ahead and go with a Bauhaus-inspired cover, but a lot of these techniques will work with the new typography um, and the other options as well. So let's go ahead and get started by um, changing the background color a bit. So we can do this by drawing a rectangle over the background like this, and then you can change your fill color to a creamy color, I'm sorry, to like an orange or a yellow color. And I'm going to get rid of my stroke. And then we can go to this opacity hot link here. Just click on that. Right here, this drop-down menu is our blending modes. We can change our blending mode to multiply, and it shows through right there. The other option we can do is keep that blending mode normal or multiply, either one, but turn our opacity way down, and then we get more of a kind of creamy background color there. You can also just play with the fill to try to find something maybe more warm like this. And yeah, so there you go. So let's go ahead and take a look at our layers panel. And I just wanted to give you a heads up. Make sure that if you need to make changes in your document and you've already saved it as a PDF, but you realize that you want to go ahead and change something, make sure that you open up your Illustrator version, the .ai version, because when you save it as a PDF, it automatically only has the PDF, Illustrator only has the PDF version up. So you have to close the PDF version, go back and go to File Open and find this Illustrator version to work on. Okay, so now that we have that done, my background layer is locked, so it didn't create that rectangle on the background layer. So I'm going to unlock it in the Layers panel and then just grab this little green dot and slide it on down to the background there. I'm going to stay working on this background layer, and we are going to establish a grid to work with. So over here in your Tools panel, under the Line Segment tool, click on the Rectangular Grid tool. Now go ahead and double click on that icon, and I want you to enter these dimensions. Go ahead and enter 15 inches wide, 15 minutes high, 15 inches wide and 15 inches high. For the horizontal dividers, give yourself 20 of them. And for the vertical dividers, give yourself 20 of them. We're not going to skew these here. We're going to leave this how it is and make sure Fill Grid is not checked and hit OK. So now we can click anywhere on the screen. That rectangular grid options pop-up comes up again, hit OK, and now it drops the grid into place. So I just zoomed out by hitting Command minus. So we need to rotate this grid. So I can use my Rotate tool. Just double click on it, and you can rotate your grid anywhere between 20 degrees to, I'd say, 45 degrees for these for this assignment. I'm going to go with 30. If you go with 45 degrees, the advantage there is when you are rotating things using the selection tool, you can hold down the shift key as you're rotating it, and it will snap in 45-degree increments. So that's just an option. But I'm going to use this to show you, the step that you'll need to take if you don't choose 45 degrees. So I'm choosing 30, I'll hit OK. And then I'm going to just use my selection tool to kind of center this grid up. You got to actually click on the outside edges of the grid. It disappears while you're drawing since I don't have any fill or strokes applied, but that's fine. And there we go. So now we're going to turn this into a guide. So I have this in my place. I'm going to go to Window. I'm going to go to View and down to Guides and then Make Guides. Boop. And now it's given us these cyan lines as a guide to work with. I'm also, if that's too hard to see, you can go to your preferences. So on a Mac, you're going to go to Illustrator Preferences. On a PC, you go to File, and then I believe it's down at the bottom of the File menu. But then once you're in there, it all looks the same. So once you find your preferences, you can go to Guides and Grid, and you can change the color of your guides so that you can see it a little bit better. So I'm going to change the color of our guide to red for now, just so I can see it easier on that background. So I'm done with my background layer. I've got my texture on the background, the color changing rectangle over it, and then I have this grid is on there as well, and that's right here is this group. So I'm going to lock this layer and get working. I can get rid of this front cover placeholder text for now. You can just slide it off to the side or you can delete it, whichever you'd prefer. And I'm going to start working on my front of my, this is the front, remember the panel all the way, the artboard all the way to the right is the front cover of your book. So let's go ahead and choose a color group to work with. I'm going to go to my properties panel, and you need to click on something on an object first to bring up the appearance panel so that you can find your swatches. I'll click on the fill swatch and then go to the swatches area of that pop out and then to the swatches library menu. From there, I recommend going to art history, and then in here there's all these different groups already created, different color groups. I'm going to choose Russian poster art because how perfect is that for this assignment? Let me go ahead and bring that over to show it to you. And from here, I decided for mine, I'm going to choose this second option here. It's like an orange, kind of yellowy, real light yellow, and a blue. And if I click on that, then go back into my fill swatch, it's automatically placed this new color group in that swatches panel. So remember that swatches panel, this is only available in this file. It's not going to show up, this color group's not going to automatically show up when I open a different Illustrator file. I also want to use a dark green, so I'll grab that and pop it down there. And I like these three oranges as well, so I'm going to select all three by holding down the Shift key and drop them next to this other orange in there, so it kind of creates a little gradient there. Okay, that looks great. So I can actually get rid of one of these. So I'll click on one and hit the little trash can. It says, do you want the delete the swatch selection? Yes, there you go. Now I have my little group all nice and organized. So let's go ahead and add our title to our cover. I'm going to work with my Wizard of Oz theme that I've been working on. So I can just type in the Wizard of Oz using my regular type tool. And remember, if you're doing Bauhaus, they like to use all small letters. Not all the time, but you can. You can use all lowercase letters if you'd like. I'm going to choose the Bayer universal font. There it is. And I'm going to just, instead of adjusting my font size here, using my selection tool, I'm just going to grab the corner of that text and then hold down Shift to constrain the proportions and pull that text to make it bigger. All right. So now I can go into my rotate tool again, click on that and change it to 30 degrees and hit OK. And then just use my move tool, my selection tool to move the text. So I found that with these compositions, it works really nicely when it's kind of spiraling out from a sort of center point. So I'm going to have my center point be kind of the top third here of the cover. If these are too distracting over here, I can just delete the placeholder text for the spine and the back cover. The other thing that I do recommend is you can go to Rulers, View, Rulers, Show Rulers, and from here you can place a little margin line. So I'm going to have my margin be 1/4 of an inch, and I can see up at the top here at the ruler that I'm at 1/8 and 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to make another margin line over here on this edge at 13 and 1/4. I'm sorry, 13 and 3/4. And then also here, this is going to be 1/4. And then another one at the bottom, going to be 8 and 3/4. And these don't have to be perfect for this assignment, but when you're working for a client, you should make them perfect. So that way we are not too close to our trim line. This black line is our trim line here. And because we have this background extended beyond the trim line, it just makes it a little harder to see. So I like to use these margin guides to help kind of keep me all safe from the trim line there. Great. Okay, so that's our title text. I'm going to leave it black for now. And then let's put in a few more lines of text. I need to put in the author's name. So you can write by whoever. I'm going to write written by for this one. And his name is L. Frank Baum. So L. Frank, Baum, and then I can grab it and make it a little bigger. Cool, okay. And I would like to rotate it now clockwise to go along one of these lines. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my rotate tool, and that's going to be 30 plus 90 was 120 degrees. So I'm doing a little bit of math here. Oops, I did it backwards. Let's try that again. Okay, 360 minus 30 is going to be 330. That's what, oh, no, not far enough. Let's try one more time. I don't know why I can't do the math right now. Maybe 300? There it is. Okay. So whenever I want to rotate it clockwise, I need to punch in 300. When I want to rotate it counterclockwise, I need to punch in 30 degrees, and that's going to keep us snapped to those grid lines there, looking really nice. So then once I line it up where I like it to be, and I'm using this grid, like it's not just there as a placeholder, it's there to make it look really organized and beautiful. I'm going to duplicate this with my move tool, a selection tool, I mean, and I'm going to write on this line, making sure that my alignment is aligned left in the paragraph area of the properties panel. I'm going to change this text to illustrated by me. So make sure that your book cover says it's illustrated by you. Great. And now we have some text. So if you'd like, you can also put in a little text box with a sentence about the book or a quote from the book, like, I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog too, or something the Wizard of Oz says, you know, the wizard himself, or whatever. So that's really fun to add to this composition as well. Next, let's go ahead and add some shapes because that's a really big thing on those posters, right? So we will start with a rectangle shape. You can just draw a rectangle. Let's look at the gradient tool. We haven't really played with that very much yet. And so instead of a regular fill, I'm going to go ahead and click on the gradient tool itself. And it's going to bring up my gradients panel. From there, if I click on this gray gradient, which is the default, it automatically applies that as my fill. You can also click this little drop-down menu right next to it, and there's some fills, some preloaded fills in there. For this one, I'm going to have this little rectangle represent the yellow brick road. So I'm going to choose that orange and yellow fill. But if you had the black and white fill, you can also edit it exactly like I'm going to show you right now. So I don't really want this hot orange. These down here are little color nodes, and you can just snap them off if you don't want that color on there anymore. You can also slide them around to adjust the gradient itself, and you can watch that happen live as you're going. I'm going to click to add one more gradient. This one I want it to be white. So I just click on it and it pops up this swatches panel, the regular old swatches panel, and then I clicked on the white swatch there. And then since it's still selected, I can also change the opacity to go down to 0. And with this yellow, I'm going to change this to about 50. So it's a gradual blend. It looks muddy over here because it's over the gray background. But if I go over here, then you can see my background showing through. So that's fun. That's how you use the gradient tool. Next thing we're going to do is add a texture to this. So I'm going to go ahead and close this gradient panel here. And we're going to get more into gradients when we talk about creating our animation. That's when we're going to get into working with 3D and gradients more then. So to add an effect, we're going to go up to the effects menu on the top navigation bar. I'm going to add a little halftone. I'm sorry, not a halftone. I'm going to add some grain to this. So I'm going to go to artistic and then film grain. So that's effects, down to the Photoshop effects, choose artistic and then film grain. Then the film grain pop-up window is going to show up here. And we want it to look like an airbrushed stippling. So that's going to be a pretty chunky grain. So go ahead and pull that slider over to, at least 10 to make it look right. And then just hit OK. Great. So if your thing is not working the way you'd like it to work, this has sort of a strange line going on here, um, then you can also create a clipping mask to kind of crop that. So to create a clipping mask, you just need to make another shape directly over the layer that you want to clip. So I'm going to make another rectangle here, and I'll click and drag. This we can just fill with white by clicking on the swatch there. Great. And then, oops, I made another rectangle. Edit, redo. Oh, I can't. Let me try one more time. Okay, so I'll click and drag to create that rectangle. Then choose your select tool, select both rectangles, and then go to Object, down near the bottom to Clipping Mask, and hit Make. So whatever shape is on top of the layer, that's the shape it will clip the layer underneath. Okay, so there's our yellow brick road. And then we can change the size of this however we want. We can rotate it. Let's go ahead and rotate it 30 degrees. Okay, and we can move it using our selection tool and place it wherever we'd like to place it. All right, so that's that. And sometimes they did have shapes kind of running off of the canvas, so you can do that if you'd like. Great. So the next step, you can just use your line tool. That is right here with the rectangular grid tool. So it's at the top. We'll choose the line segment tool. From here, I'm going to make a line that goes all the way across all the artboards. So this is what's cool about having these artboards connect, is that you can create this nice wrap going around there. So the best way to make sure that it's lined up with your grid would be to draw the straight line and then choose the rotate tool, but I'm just eyeballing it for the sake of time. So with the line tool, you need to adjust the color of the stroke. So I'm going to give it this nice emerald green color. I'm also going to punch up the size of the stroke to a 5 for this one and hit OK. So that's that. Then you can add other geometric shapes. Let's go ahead and I'll add a triangle to kind of represent the witch. So to do that, we choose the polygon tool. And then as we're drawing, you can use your up and down arrows to add more sides to your polygon. So I have it turned all the way down to 3 sides. I'm going to change, I don't want my stroke to be green. I want no stroke and I want a green fill. So down here in your tool panel, you can just do a little switcheroo with this double-sided arrow, and that's the swap fill and stroke option. So click on that. Now I have a green fill and no stroke. I'm going to use my selection tool now to stretch this to make it sort of a pointy witch's hat. And then I'm going to grab a corner and hold down Shift to constrain the proportions, because it does not need to be that big, and then I'll rotate it. Great. If I want, I can add a grain to it as well, but I'm just going to leave it flat for this. And I'll stick it right about here. I'm okay if the shapes themselves go into these margins. I just don't want any text to go into the margins. I've had printers kick back files because of that, because they don't want it to get trimmed. Okay, so if that's good, that's nice and aligned. Yeah, so this little hat could represent the Emerald City. It could represent the witch. She does wear black, but her skin is green. So think about how you're using your shapes and lines and things to represent your story. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is pretty cool. We can use our ellipse tool, and I'm going to, oh, not yet. So let me bring in a photo. So I downloaded some poppies. So I'm going to go to File, Place, and go to my Downloads folder or wherever you have your image saved. And here's an image of some poppies. Oh, let me do that one more time. I'll show you a better way of doing that. So I just went to File, Place, and then clicked on my canvas, but it's a humongous file, so it dropped it really big. So instead of doing that, I'm just going to make it, I'll create the bounding window. There we go. And that's better. So it might be a little too big for what I'd like to do. Okay, that looks good to me. So now I'm going to, I have to raster this image before I can give it any effects or manipulate it the way I'd like to. So to do that, we go to Object and Rasterize. Okay, so a little less than halfway down the menu, Object, Rasterize. And then it's like, do you want to do all these things? Just leave the defaults for this one and hit OK. Great. Next, I'm going to give it I'm going to make it so that I don't see this white background. And the easiest way to do this is to change our blending mode again. So with it selected, I can click on the opacity hot link here in the properties panel. Go to this normal drop-down menu there. That's our blending modes, and choose multiply. So multiply is going to take anything that's white on your image and just basically make it transparent. After this, I'm going to give it a grain filter. Well, actually, I'm going to give it a halftone filter because that is a process that they were using back then. So to do that, I'm going to go to Effect, Pixelate, Color Halftone. That's going to bring up this halftone pop-up. I'm totally okay with these default settings, and I'll hit OK. And now you can see a nice pixelation happen there, and it preserved the color, so that's really nice. So now I'm going to make a clipping mask that's a circle, and I'm going to put this with an orange circle like a screen behind it. So first, I'm going to select the ellipse tool. I'm going to hold down my Option key to draw my circle from the center, and I'm holding down my Shift key to make it a perfect circle. And I'm just going to pull until I kind of am cropping off some of the bottom of those leaves there. So now since that layer is directly over that poppy layer, I can click and drag to select the two things. And now I'm going to go to Object, Clipping Mask, Make. So just like we did with the rectangle, we're doing the same thing here with the circle. So I'll hit Make, and now it has created this clipping mask around these poppies. So I can't really tell that it's in a circle, so I'm going to make a screen. That's what we call when you put some color behind like some text or something to make it stand out from the background. So I have my ellipse tool again. I'm going to hover over this center dot here and do the same thing that I did before by holding down Alt or Option on my keyboard and pulling to draw the circle from the center. Hold down the Shift key as you draw, and then you'll see that it kind of locks once it hits the same diameter as the circle that you're hovering over. So there's a perfect circle right over it, but I want this one to be like a nice poppy orange. So I'm going to choose this first orange here, but now I can't see my flowers. So I just need to rearrange the order of these layers. And I can do that quickly by going to, let me select it first, sorry. Okay, now I have my selection tool. I'm going to go to Object, Arrange, and then just Send Backward. Great. So now I have these cute poppies right on top. And yeah, I really like how that works. Maybe let me make this a little bit lighter. I'll go to this lightest option. Now I have some more contrast, and that's definitely more effective. So these two are a bit large. So I'm going to scale them down, and I'm going to use my grid to see how it fits here. So it is a bit big still. So I'm going to just squeeze this down so that it fits like inside of the grid a little bit better. That looks good to me. So I'm going to bring it over here to my cover and place it. Cool. Place it in the grid. Go, go, go. That looks nice. That's great. Okay. From there, just for fun, I'm going to make a few more circles. I'll grab the circle in the back, not the poppy, and I'll use my duplication method of holding with the selection tool, holding down the Alt or Option key and just clicking and dragging behind it. Let me go ahead and give this some difference by changing the color of it. I'm going to move this object using my selection tool, Object, Arrange, Send Backward. There we go. And I'm going to do one more circle the same way and line it up. There we go. Object, Arrange, Send Backward. And you couldn't tell because it was a different, same color. So there we go. I'll use a darker color there. Something I noticed on one of those Bauhaus posters was it had these, one of the circles had these like rings inside. So I'm going to show you how to make that real fast. Over here using the polar grid tool under the line segment drawer, I'm going to do the same method of hovering over this center option and holding, I'm sorry, the center little dot right there, and hold down Option and click and pull and hold down Shift at the same time as I drag. If your circles have lines on them, hold on, let me show you what that looks like. I can't, it's not letting me do it. If it has like pie lines on it, you can just hit the left arrow key as you're drawing this and they'll disappear. Hit it until they all go away. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and change the color of these lines to white and give it, yeah, I think 1 point stroke is good. You can make it even thinner if you'd like. And then I'm just going to arrange these, send backward. Let's try that again. Object, let me see. Yeah, that's too crazy. Object, arrange, send backward. And you can also hit Command open bracket a few times until it gets to where it needs to go. There it goes. Now it's starting to go back. Cool. So next I need to check my layers, see how that's going here. So right now it looks like everything is on the front cover successfully. So I'm good. I don't see anything on the other two covers. So I'm sorry, on the other two artboards. So that's looking great. I might even put in another circle up here to kind of represent Glenda, the Good Witch. So I can draw her floating in. We'll give it a no stroke. You can give it a stroke if you want, just don't give it a black stroke. So let me I can give it a white stroke. How about maybe 2 points? And then we'll give it a light blue fill. And that's nice. And then from there, we can just kind of like line these shapes up a bit, overlap them. You can put things behind your text here. That might look cool. So there's lots of options you can do. You can add more text, more shapes, more lines, and it'll look fantastic. Just looking at my notes to make sure I got everything on there. Oh yeah, let's do one more thing. We need to change the color of our text now. So you can click on the whole row of text and change the color. The other thing you can do is using the True Type tool. Let me hold down the type drawer here and get the touch type tool. You can click on one of those letters or you can hold down Shift. Nope, you have to do one at a time, sorry. And you can change the color of the letters individually by just doing that. You can also do that by holding your regular type tool, and selecting the whole word there and giving it a color change if you want to do something like that. Okay, so don't feel like you need to keep the text black because you see that in some of the a lot of the examples that you saw in the slideshow. The other thing you can do too, I noticed that sometimes they'll take a letter and they will put a gradient, I'm sorry, not a gradient, they'll put some sort of a texture on it. So if you wanted to do that, then you will have to expand this text. So that's going to make it uneditable. But to do that, you would select the text and then go to Type and Create Outlines. And then from there, you would need to use your Group Select tool. Sorry about that. You can use your Group Select tool, or you can use your Direct Select tool, or you can ungroup the text. I'm just going to use my Group Selection tool and click on the letter that I'd like to add the effect to. Go to Effect, Pixelate, or no, where are we? Stylize, was it? Hold on. Oh, Artistic, thank you. Go to Artistic and then Film Grain, and then hit OK. And so now that one has this sort of airbrushed stippling assigned to it. But you can't apply an effect like that until you make the type outlines. All right, I can't wait to see what you all come up with. This is such an exciting assignment.